Hey everybody, Dr. G here. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist and body language expert, and today we're going to be analyzing the behavior and body language of Scott Peterson. Scott Peterson is currently serving a life sentence for the murder of his wife, Laci Peterson, and their unborn son. Recently, there have been several documentaries released about this case, and today we're going to be looking at his interrogation as well as some other footage of him doing interviews. Before we get started with this, a couple of quick things. One, I wanted to make sure you know this is not a psychological evaluation of any kind. These are just my opinions. In addition to that, I do want to remind you to like and subscribe if you want to see more content just like this. All right, let's go. The first footage we're going to watch are clips of Scott Peterson's interrogation. Let's just jump right in.
Pretty much got all I'm going to do. Let's just go over what we already talked about so I can make some notes. See if you remember something that maybe you don't really remember.
Now, the first thing you're going to notice about his body language is as he scooted the chair forward, he actually leaned back. We do that to gain distance from the person we're talking to. So leaning back in some way pulls back emotionally. It does also pull back physically. He's also got his hands in his pockets, his legs crossed. He's showing in a lot of ways that he's closed off right now.
So today, just tell me about the morning.
Okay. I don't know what time we got up. Probably Laci got up and went and.
You'll also notice how casual he looks. Now you see, like I said, he's got his hands in his pockets, he's leaning back, but in some ways that can be seen as defiant. Rather than sitting up, rather than leaning forward, paying attention and being engaged, he's sort of slumped over, he's leaning back. So that also shows a bit of defiance in just the way that he's sitting.
Okay, cookies of some sort. They're talking about what to do with meringue.
And I can't remember, your house, you had the converted garage area. Is that your TV room like?
Yeah.
Is that where you were then? Okay, did you eat any breakfast?
Now, I know I already pointed out that his hands are in his pockets, but you'll also notice he's really not moving at all. Now, you don't have to move a lot. Some people move more than others, but it doesn't change the fact that there is something noteworthy about the fact he's moving so little. Because when we feel threatened, we have a freeze, flight, or fight response. And that freeze response, it's in order to hide. It's when you feel that you're vulnerable in some way. So he continues to not move, and I think that that's an inner reflection that he's feeling vulnerable right now.
Yeah, that was true.
Okay, and then what? When did you realize you were going to go fishing?
Oh, that was a morning decision. It's if it was a morning, so play golf at the club or go fishing.
Okay.
You see, as he's not using his hands to illustrate any of this, once again, that's something we start to see as a little bit suspicious. Not everybody has to talk with their hands all the time, but we tend to automatically do that. So it seems very intentional that his hands are firmly staying in his pockets. Because in a context like this, you typically wouldn't sit that way.
And ball prep. So that was right. Just prepping for breakfast, and she's gonna make gingerbread cookies for tonight.
What was she momming?
The tile in the entryway area.
So he just asked where she was mopping, and he basically said the tile in the entryway area. This matters because of what's coming next. Just keep watching.
The entry of your front door or the entry of your little interior converted?
Well, not the front door, but that back door that we came in.
Right, where the mop was outside of it?
No.
Where your dogs weren't out to your backyard?
Okay, we have the converted garage.
Yeah.
All right, so now he's pulled both hands out. Now he's leaning forward a little bit. Now he's emphasizing. He really wants to emphasize this point of where the mop was used or what area was mopped. So to him, this is very important for whatever reason.
And then you have the kitchen, and then you have a room with 2 chairs in it.
Right.
Yeah, that room. In the kitchen. I don't know how far she planned to go.
So from a perspective of body language, that means that we really need to emphasize why that matters so much to him. Why, out of all the details he provided, because he talked about where she went, what she did, all of those things. But when it came to what area was mopped, he really wanted to emphasize and talk about where she had mopped. So keep in mind, for whatever reason, that's very important to him.
All right, then you have the kitchen, and then you have a room with 2 chairs in it.
Right.
Yeah, that room. In the kitchen. I don't know how far she planned to go.
And afterward, sits back, hands firmly planted back in his pockets.
She had me put the bucket by the front door for her.
She had me put the bucket next to the front door for her. So another detail that he wants to make sure to include. Now we're going to skip ahead a little bit to see Scott Peterson talking about when he was out on the boat that day.
Did you have a map for that area, or
No.
would you just wing it? So you just, when you got in your boat and you took off, did you go very far? Or?
Well, I mean, probably a couple miles. Went north, found like a little island.
So here's him pulling out his hands again. And this is important because we'll know that he wants to emphasize something. Now, as he's been asked questions up to this point, he sits very still. He doesn't move much. But when he's talking about a detail like this, he pulls his hands out to emphasize. We'll keep going, and I'll explain why I think that is.
Kind of deal there. Island had a bunch of trash on it. I remember a big sign that said no landing. It looked like some broken piers around it. I just assumed it'd be a decent, shallow area.
So he's emphasizing an island area that he sees as shallow, which I presume is important in the sense that if he was going to dump a body or whatever it is, you wouldn't do that in shallow water. So maybe he felt like that was an important detail to emphasize. But as he sits still, you're going to notice throughout this, oftentimes when he's talking about important details that are important to the case, he doesn't really move around as much. But when he talks about things that are important to him or important to his version of the case, he moves around a lot more. He uses his hands a lot more. We'll keep going for now.
Did you troll?
A little bit. Why don't I left 2 at home? I thought I left 2 on the mobile. Maybe I didn't leave the second one on the mobile.
So the two at home, though, one was from when you left and one was some other time? Or?
One was when I left Berkeley, and the other one was when I was driving in Livermore, and the traffic was pretty bad. I knew I wouldn't be home by 4, so I gave her a call.
Now, he was just talking about messages that he had left. Basically, he was talking about, from what I could hear, because I know this is hard to hear, the second message he had left. Now, if you watch his hands, he keeps his hands very low as he's talking about this. We associate low hands with low confidence as he's discussing what he said happened.
And the other one was when I was driving in Livermore, and the traffic was pretty bad. I knew I wouldn't be home by 4, so I gave her a call.
Now, the drink afterwards, this is always tough because people sometimes just get thirsty. Sometimes they just need something to drink. But you also have to keep in mind that there is a soothing element to drinking because it touches your lips. It helps you feel calmer. So sometimes after a lie, people tend to take a sip of water, take a sip from a drink. You can't build a whole lot off of that, but it's worth noting because sometimes it can fit a pattern. We'll go ahead and stop with the police interview here. It looks like much of his body language is the same throughout. Very little movement and moving on details that seem more to benefit him than benefit the case. Now we're going to watch a few minutes of Diane Sawyer's interview with Scott Peterson. I've covered this before, but it's been a while, so I thought I would cover it again. Let's jump right in.
I think everybody sitting at home wants the answer to the same question. Did you murder your wife?
No.
Now, this was interesting. I know we're just getting into this, but oftentimes we raise our eyebrows to bring attention to our face. But there's another reason we raise our eyebrows as well, because there is a small expression of shock. So when we're shocked, we open our mouths, we raise our eyebrows up. When she asked this question, there was a surge of shock that went through him. Watch this right here.
The answer to the same question. Did you murder?
Right there. Did you murder your wife? As soon as she said you, his eyebrows went up. So I think there was some shock in that question, maybe some fear that came along with that.
Did you murder your wife?
No.
So as he's saying no, and he closes his eyes, we oftentimes close our eyes when we're answering somebody and we don't want to have to look at them, when we want to sort of block out the intensity of saying something to them, when we oftentimes associate this with deception or potentially lying. Let's keep going.
And I had absolutely nothing to do with her disappearance, and use the word murder, and yeah.
So that time he raised his eyebrows, it was a little bit different when he said, I had nothing to do with her disappearance. He really wants to emphasize that. That's what he wants you to hear out of what he's saying.
Absolutely nothing to do with her disappearance. And
see, there's the eyebrow raise.
And use the word murder, and yeah, I mean, that is a possibility. It's not one we're ready to accept, and it creeps in my mind late at night and early in the morning. And during the day, all we can think about is the right resolution is to find her well.
So this is another thing that seems to be a little bit interesting, and this is something I didn't talk about last time. He seems to be rambling a bit because I think he wants to answer the question right. So as he's saying this, and it feels like he needs to keep providing more details. Listen to this part right here.
My mind late at night and early in the morning. And during the day, all we can think about is the right resolutions.
You also notice the somewhat inappropriate expression. It seems like it's almost a smile as he's talking about this. Now, sometimes we have awkward smiles when we're talking about something that makes us uncomfortable, but when he's talking about the fact that he feels like or believes that his wife might be murdered, it's incongruent, as we might say. The facial expression doesn't really match with what he's talking about.
A possibility. It's not one we're ready to accept, and it creeps in my mind late at night and early in the morning. And during the day, all we can think about is the right resolution is to find her.
Was this the first time? Are there others out there?
No.
There's no one else who can come forward?
No. I owe a tremendous apology to everyone.
Had you told anyone? Did you tell police?
Told the police immediately.
When?
That was the first night we were together. The police, I spent with the police.
You told them about...
So listen to the way that he's speaking here. Watch the way that his eyes are moving, because as we're going to hear in a second, this is a verifiable lie. So once we can get a snapshot of what somebody looks like while they're lying, you can look for those patterns as we continue to go, because by his own admission, what he is about to say is not true.
Police?
Told the police immediately.
When?
That was the first night.
So he actually answered her question. He didn't deflect, but as you can see, he looked away, then closed his eyes. So when he does that, when he looks away, when he closes his eyes, that's something that we should continue to look for, because now we're getting a baseline of his verifiable lies.
Together. The police, I spent with the police.
You told them about her?
Yeah, from December 24th on.
So he tends, once again, he tends to ramble. He tends to provide too much information. He tends to continue to talk when he probably should stop. And listen to this part right here.
The police.
You told them about her?
Yeah, from December 24th on.
That wasn't true, and Scott Peterson called us after the interview to set the record straight. He said he never told the police about his affair with Amber Fry, but claims he did tell his wife.
Did your wife find out about it?
I told my wife.
So you'll notice his facial expression saying, I told my wife, is almost identical to when he said that he told police, which, as we just heard, was in fact a lie.
Did your wife find out about it?
I told my wife.
See, look away, close his eyes, nod his head. Same thing.
Had you told anyone? Did you tell police?
Told the police immediately.
When?
That was the first night we were together.
I think everybody sitting at home wants the answer to the same question. Did you murder your wife?
No, I did not. And I had absolutely nothing.
The first thing that Laci did every morning was pull open the curtains. But this morning, they were never pulled open.
Yeah, they were down when I returned.
So you see his brow furrowed. Now he's really concentrating on this because he's trying to figure out how to reply to this question. So you're seeing something that has him contemplating more, thinking harder than the previous questions he's been asked, maybe because it's not something that he thought he would be asked.
Yeah, they were down when I returned. It's very common in the summer that she opens up the curtains. But again, we're talking about a day that, I don't know what it was, probably 40 degrees that day or something. And during the winter, we don't open the curtains to keep the house warm.
Nothing to that, nothing suspicious.
No, I mean, certainly I wish if something had happened to her in the house, I wish they'd been open so someone may have been able to stop it.
Now that was an interesting look right there when he said, I wish they'd been opened. Let's go back and watch this sequence again.
Suspicious.
No, I mean, certainly I wish if something had happened to her in the house, I wish they'd been open so someone.
So, as he said, if something happened to her in the house with his eyes closed, I'm just going to throw something out here. Watch this. Okay, so he's saying if something happened in the house. Now, if for argument's sake, Scott Peterson, in fact, has done what he's been accused of, he probably would have seen in his mind's eye things that, in fact, happened in the house. Watch how almost startled he looks when he opens his eyes.
If something had happened to her in the house, I wish they'd been open so someone may have been able to stop it. But in the winter, who opens their curtains for the draft?
So it's not impossible that he just had a strong reaction saying that he wished someone had seen it. But there seemed to be an unusual quality about saying he wishes somebody had seen what happened or wishes somebody had seen it. And there seems to be almost a surge of adrenaline because it seemed like such a strong reaction, although it was just a flash. We'll watch it one last time, then we'll keep going.
If something had happened to her in the house, I wish they'd been open so someone may have been able to stop it. But in the winter, who opens their curtains for the draft?
Another story that is out there is that the kitchen was spotless.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, there was still a wet mop around, which indicated somebody had cleaned something very recently.
Laci was mopping the floors when I left that morning. Yes, the house is spotless. She had a cleaning lady on Monday, the 23rd.
So if the cleaning lady had been there, why have to clean again?
Dog, 2 cats, muddy backyard. She mopped those floors every day.
So he is on it. When it comes to the mop, just like we saw in the police interview, he really wants to emphasize this. To him, this is an important point. He comes back to it over and over again, and he has answers just like that. He is answering so quickly on these.
And I emptied the bucket when I returned.
Throughout the interview, he insisted he was innocent.
Are you afraid police will arrest you?
No. I know there's no basis. I had nothing to do with her disappearance. So there's no possible evidence or anything like that.
Listen to how quietly he says this. We oftentimes say things quietly, once again, when we're trying to hide. And so as he says this, it seems like he's saying it as quietly as you possibly could into a microphone.
I had nothing to do with her disappearance. So there's no possible evidence or anything like that.
So we'll go ahead and stop here. Hopefully this is helping you better understand some of the behavior and body language we observed from Scott Peterson. Now, I'm sure a lot of people have a lot of questions because some recent docuseries have suggested that maybe they got the wrong guy. Maybe the jury got it wrong. Do I personally think that? There was nothing in these interviews based on his behavior and his body language that made me think that the jury got it wrong. Although I know there's a lot of very strong feelings about the evidence, and I know a lot of spirited debates about it, I don't have any reason to think that the jury in fact got it wrong based on what we looked at today. That being said, if there's other things you want me to look at, if there are other interviews you want me to watch, please let me know in the comments below. I couldn't find any more recent interviews because I know he's done some, and if there's anybody that wants me to analyze those, I'd be happy to. If you have any other thoughts or any questions or any other cases you want me to look at, also let me know in the comments below. Last thing before we get finished up is I do want to remind you to like and subscribe if you want to see more content just like this. All right, thanks for watching.